Mr. Polanski, next question.
Yes, you say that these people from other planets evidently are friendly, these people from the unidentified flying objects, but who are they? What are they from? What are their motives for being here?
Well, Mr. Polanski, after the years of investigation we put into this, we know that they are part of the race of man that was created throughout the universe. They have operated in space probably before there was ever a civilization on this planet.
Where do they come from? Did they tell you where they came from?
They didn't tell me where they came from, because that would be just like somebody coming into New York Harbor in a ship and telling you they came from Paris or some port across the ocean.
Have they told you where they've been?
No, they didn't tell me where they'd been or where they was going. They didn't even let me know they were leaving until they just took off.
You do believe that they have a base on the moon, however?
I do believe they have a base on the moon, the Gassendi crater. It's been photographed.
Any other places that you know that they might have been or have a base?
Not that I know of.
How do these, excuse me, how do these spaceships get around? I mean, do they use jet power or rocket power, or how did this one you saw fly about?
Well, this, Mr. Bundy, is the reason I believe the Air Force is withholding the information, because of the impact it would have on our economy, which is critical anyway.
Well, you admit you have no evidence of that, the fact that they're withholding information, other than that they don't agree with your observations.
I state that this is the reason I believe they're withholding the information, because these ships are powered by electrostatic magnetic energy identically the same as a planet, a galaxy, a moon, or anything else in space. They merely copied the principle of a planet like the one we're riding on and applied directional control, and they can go anywhere with it.
Mr. Jankowitz, next question.
Mr. Tassel, what reports, if any, do you or your group receive from the Soviet bloc countries concerning the sighting of UFO phenomena?
Well, oddly enough, we don't receive anything, either from Red China. Some of the Japanese bulletins do quote from some information in Red China, but I don't know where they get it. We don't get any.
Didn't you have possession of a photograph showing a saucer, I believe it was in Italy, with a creature of some sort that had apparently come from this saucer?
That's right. These pictures were taken by a man named Monguzzi in 1952. He and his wife had climbed a glacier, and they took their camera along, and they often climbed glaciers, and while they were up there, the ship came down, and they took photographs of it.
We have some reproductions of those photographs, Mr. Van Tassel. Could you describe this?
Well, the man got out and walked around at once, according to them, got back aboard, and it took off. And they took pictures of the ship sitting there from a crevice they jumped down into. The foreground is all ice of the glacier, and the mountain sticks out of the glacier in the background. This man walked around at once, apparently got back in, and they took off again. And the shots showing the approach, the coming in for the landing and the departure are there in the magazine, too.
Doesn't that man have a spacesuit on in that picture?
It looks like it.
And normally people think of people from space and from Mars as two-headed creatures or people with spacesuits or some odd type of an individual. And you previously stated that the people that you saw from another world were normal-looking people just like us, like the human creature. Is that correct?
Well, when in Rome, they do as the Romans do. If they're going to wander around among us down the street, they're certainly not going to wear their spacesuit.
Oh, do you claim then that they can change their physical makeup?
Their apparel, yes. I mean, John Glenn used a spaceship out in space, too, but he don't wear it down the street.
Oh, in other words, these people wear the same type of paraphernalia and equipment as our astronauts do.
In this particular picture, yes. In the contact I had with them, no.
But you don't contend that these are abnormal creatures that are living on another planet?
I contend that they're superior beings of a superior race.
Very similar to My Favorite Martian.
Well, I don't even watch My Favorite Martian because we don't have TV where we are other than UHF, and we only get a couple channels. But I believe that this is the race of man that was created in the sixth day of creation, and they have dominion over all things, and that we are a inferior type of people, and we've followed destructive patterns and wars and destruction down through our history. And they've come here in a time of crisis when we know our earthquakes are increasing, tornadoes. There's a geophysical condition taking place throughout the solar system.
Do you contend, Mr. Van Tassel, that these are God-fearing people like we are?
I maintain that they are agents of God.
Mr. Polanski, next question.
You state that these people from outer space are very similar to people you might see here in the United States. In what way are they different? Would you say they're Anglo-Saxon? Are they yellow? Are they black? Do they have 5 toes or 3 toes? Or do they have fingernails? Are there any differences that you feel that you noticed that you could distinguish them from the people that you might expect to be born on this planet?
Nothing that I could observe except a feeling that emanates from them.
How about language? Do you speak to the American language, the English language?
The man I talked to talked English equivalent to Ronald Coleman. And the other 3 men aboard the ship didn't say anything.
There were 4 altogether.
Normally they communicate by thought among themselves, which indicates they're superior to us.
How do you know that?
Simply because every time I went to ask this man a question, he answered me before I could get the first word out.
Mr. Jankowitz, next question.
Mr. Van Tassel, you stated that you believe that these creatures were agents of God. What do you mean by agents of God? Do you mean something like angels, or do you believe that they're supernatural, that they're possibly omnipotent or omniscient as God is?
No, they said that they live and die like we do, except in the school of life they're in one grade and we're in another grade. And yes, like angels. Back in the time when people didn't know man could fly, they pictured these people that came out of the sky with wings simply because the only thing they knew that could fly in the sky were birds with wings. So to make a distinction between ones who came out of the sky and ones who walked the earth, they drew pictures of wings on these people.
Now, Mr. Van Tassel, what is the average shape and size of a UFO? I mean, do they fall into categories, or are they all the same?
Well, I have had radar men from the Marine Corps tell me that they have had blips on their radar scopes 6 times larger than our largest bomber makes.
The next question, Mr. Bundy.
Well, some of those radar sightings turned out to be flocks of geese and rocks on an island that the radar didn't pick up. Isn't that correct? Remember that?
Well, a goose isn't 6 times larger than a B-52, or even a flock of them.
Well, Mr. Van Tassel, are you acquainted with Howard Menger, who has described some of his visits to the moon and the cities up there that he saw?
I've met the man, yes, Mr. Bundy.
Do you feel that his stories as to what he's seen up there about cities on the moon and moon people are true?
I don't qualify or disqualify anybody else's stories. If you were hit by a car crossing the street and you told me about it after you were well, I would certainly accept your word that it happened.
Mr. Polanski, next question.
You state that these people are friendly, but isn't it a fact that there have been some incidents where people have vanished or been killed just after a sighting, or were close to a sighting? I believe you mentioned before we went on the air a certain incident about a pilot who crashed or disappeared. Could you tell us about that?
That's quite true. Captain Mantell crashed in the pursuit of one of these ships in a P-51 Mustang, and this was never fully explained by the Air Force. His last remark over the radio to the tower on the ground was, "My God, it's big." And that was all they ever heard from him. Now, there are incidents down through history of a number of conditions. In fact, there have been 3 landings in since the first of this year. One near Watsonville, California, where the mayor, the chief of police, and the citizens of the town saw the ship come down. One in Florida, 2 in Florida, one in Fort Myers, and one down near Miami. And these were recorded in the local papers, but they never went over the wire services to the rest of the country. This in itself indicates to me censorship.
Mr. Steinberg, time for one or two more questions.
Do you think that when the astronauts eventually reach the moon and land there, that there will be a clash between the Earth and the moon, or between the Earth and any other planets?
These people are developed far beyond the idea of fighting anybody for anything. They have devices developed for defensive purposes that there's no reason for them to carry weapons or fight anybody.
What if it so happened that the United States and Russia both landed at the same time, or both had an opportunity to establish themselves upon the moon? Do you think that there would be a revolt by the moon people as against either one of these two countries in their struggle for power?
Well, to give an answer on a supposition of this kind would not really mean much. Now, I know that in this Life magazine of this last week, the two astronauts gave their own accounts of going around and stepping out into space from the Russian story. And they claimed there was a satellite in orbit with them a half a mile away from their ship. Now, I defy anybody to put a satellite up there in orbit with men aboard it that isn't controlled by and have another one a half a mile away unless it's being flown by somebody under control.
Mr. Van
Mr.
Tassel,
Bundy?
didn't the spacemen that you claim you contacted out in California actually threaten to launch thousands of saucers per second against our Earth?
No,
Didn't you so report that?
they've never threatened to do anything.
Didn't you write that they had reported to...
No, I didn't write that they had threatened to do anything at any time. I might have said they were capable of doing something.
But they didn't actually threaten to do so.
No.
Mr. Polanski, next question.
Yes, what has been the public approach to your talks? I understand you're touring now and giving talks and showing your pictures. Has it been one of skepticism or ridicule, or have people generally been open-minded towards your subject?
Well, Mr. Polanski, over the last 9 years, I have noticed practically no skepticism. In the beginning, there was a little, but it just faded out. And I think this is partly due to our own space program. People are becoming space-minded. And when they see pictures taken from an astronaut takes in orbit of the Earth and show it as a round ball down there or a curved surface, I think our people are waking up to the fact that if we can fly around the planet and we can ride a ball of rock around the sun through space, certainly there's nothing to prohibit some other intelligence from doing the same thing.
Gentlemen, that's all the time we have for Milwaukee Reports. I'd like to thank first our panel of junior bar members for being with us. On my right, Mr. Richard Steinberg, Mr. Burton Polanski, Mr. Harry Jankowitz, and Mr. Peter Bundy. And to our guest, Mr. Van Tassel, it's been a pleasure having you on Milwaukee Reports and having you in Milwaukee for the first time. We certainly hope to have you back again sometime and have another very interesting and entertaining program. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Maybe you'll bring some friends along with you.
Maybe you'll bring some friends along next time. Next Tuesday evening at the same time, our guest will be the Governor of Nevada, Governor Grant Sawyer, and we'll be discussing at that time, among other things, legalized gambling in the state of Nevada. So be sure to be with us next Tuesday and every Tuesday at 6:30 for Milwaukee Reports. This is Bob Herzog. Good evening.
This has been Milwaukee Reports, with panelists selected from the membership of the Milwaukee Junior Bar Association and their guests. Questions asked by the panelists do not necessarily represent the opinion of the panelist, but are asked only to bring out the views of the guests. Milwaukee Reports is produced by the WISN-TV Department of Public Affairs in cooperation with the Milwaukee Junior Bar Association. The views expressed on this program by the guests and panelists do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of WISN-TV and its management.